Today on Notsam Wrestling, Drew McIntyre loses in Scotland. We look at that and all of the fallout from Clash at the Castle. Ricochet gets written off TV. There are WWE superstars popping up in promotions across the entire world. And what did Finn Balor do with that hotel key? This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling, coming off of a hot angle. So, of course, we did an instant reaction podcast to Clash at the Castle, kind of going over the entire pay-per-view. Megan Morant was over here, and we kind of just vomited out all of our feelings immediately after Clash at the Castle. And I won't repeat all of that, but now that we've had some time to kind of sit with it, you know, the real news coming out of Clash at the Castle is the feelings that many have over Drew McIntyre getting screwed again. It started with the post show. I mean, you heard Wade Barrett on commentary not being thrilled that Drew McIntyre had gotten screwed. I'm going to tell you right now, I remember having a conversation with Wade Barrett after Clash of the Castle in 2022, and he was in the club of people who felt like Drew McIntyre should have gotten that title in Wales 2 years ago. Now we're back, and we're in Scotland. And you talk about keeping that same energy. Wade Barrett pops up on the post show and says CM Punk should be fired. And then after Triple H makes his comments, to the press about how great it is to have Phil Brooks back in the WWE, Wade Barrett takes great umbrage with that. And again, asserts that he should be fired. And it was really interesting watching Jackie and Big E try to come up with arguments as to why, just because we like CM Punk, just because we're enjoying the story, why logically Wade Barrett was wrong. I just love, that kind of blurring the lines where it's like Wade is taking this very, very far. We're mixing this in with storytelling and this press conference that's more the reality of the situation. Where does it stop? Where does it end? It all gets blurred together. And I think Wade Barrett ends up being the television voice of the fan, especially in Glasgow, but across the world. I saw it all over social media. I saw it in my mentions. I saw it in conversations that I had with fellow wrestling fans, that there are two camps. There were people like me who walked in assuming Drew wasn't going to win because of the story being told, because it's just too perfect, because it's all lined up so well for him to win. And the moment is so there that if CM Punk were on a quest to take things away from Drew McIntyre, why would he not rob him of this moment? And when he does rob him of that moment, we've now gotten this rivalry to a point where there's no turning back. We're now in the midst of an absolute blood feud where it's not just about wisecracks on Twitter anymore. Now it's, you've taken everything from me and put me in a corner with nothing left to lose. And Punk saying this is what happens. And this is what should happen. If we are to believe in this CM Punk character that has become so popular because there is no line between Phil Brooks and CM Punk. Because even the most experienced wrestling fan still watches a CM Punk segment wondering if we're going to get real life or storyline or what's what. This goes back to, before the pipe, you could bring this back to Ring of Honor. When there's an acknowledgement that he signed a deal with WWE, when he won the Ring of Honor contract, the Ring of Honor championship anyway, and then he threatened in the very first summer of Punk to bring that title over to WWE. It was the first time that I recall on that level that somebody from the indies who was absolutely beloved signed a deal with WWE. And instead of just allowing the celebration for him to happen, used it as a storyline to become the ultimate villain. Because while it was a storyline, it was also true. He did sign his WWE deal. Well, I don't know if it was his actual deal, but he did sign a deal with WWE while he was Ring of Honor champion. He was going over there and not staying in Ring of Honor. The pipe bomb promo changed wrestling forever. That was specifically a time in wrestling where the lines were not very blurred at all. There were pretty concrete lines. WWE was a show. And it at that point, aside from, maybe the Nexus coming out a year or so before that, however long before that it was, whatever, like aside from maybe a few outliers, generally speaking, it wasn't the easiest time in the world to have that suspension of disbelief. You kind of knew what you were watching the whole time, but you've been watching it for so long. You love it. You love wrestling. You're going to keep watching wrestling. CM Punk comes out and says all this stuff that's true, that you're not allowed to say on TV, or so we thought, to build up to a match that was part of a story. But the story of the match was all this stuff that has nothing to do with storyline. So now all of a sudden, we're rooting for the man, not the character, in a world of fiction. The line is as blurred as it's ever been. And that continues on, into AEW and outside of AEW to this day. The feelings that fans, not people who have worked with him, not people who have shared a locker room with him, not people who are in the industry, but people who don't know him at all, have feelings about this guy that are not just based on what happens on camera, but based on what they read in the internet about who this guy is off camera. Not just based on fights that they've seen on television in a scripted combat sports entertainment, professional wrestling, but fights that they've heard about that were never supposed to happen, that were real life. And that's that allure of CM Punk. In a world where we all know what we're watching, he's this guy who blurs that line. And Drew McIntyre has become one of those guys where you don't see Drew McIntyre, even when he's quote unquote out of character, he's still talking about how much he hates CM Punk. And this Drew CM Punk story literally goes back to the first day that CM Punk walked back into the WWE at Survivor Series last year, when Drew stormed off. And people said on the internet, reputable wrestling analysts said Drew was pissed about Punk. And remember the reports? He stormed out of the building. Remember those reports? It all weaves in. And even as CM Punk was kind of building this thing with Seth Rollins, and it looked like that's where we were going for WrestleMania, Drew was still part of it. There was always this thing that Drew never let down his point that he didn't like this guy. And is this a story, a match that we're building, or is this real life? No one knows. So now you get to this point where Drew, as a character or whatever, as this story is gone, has said, I'm very happy you're injured. I prayed for it to happen. I'm glad that your whole plan and your dream of returning to WrestleMania as the hero has been completely ruined. That makes me happy. I prayed for it to happen, and I'm very glad that it did. This is a happy day. Your sadness brings me great joy. Not the injury itself, but just the fact that it's killed your spirit. I love that. That's what Drew McIntyre is saying. If we're to believe this CM Punk character, if we're to believe in the appeal of what the CM Punk character has, then at that point, this CM Punk character must stop at nothing. This CM Punk, the reason that he is loved is because you can't troll this guy. Because he will not worry about the diplomacy. He will not worry about the rules of combat. He will do whatever he can to take every bit that you take from him and then a little more for himself. And he'll do that to bring everybody joy. Everybody that's ever felt like somebody got the best of them. CM Punk is that voice of the voiceless who comes forward and takes back what he deserves, and then maybe even a little more because you're a bad person. And so the fact that Drew says that he prayed for this to happen, the entire build to WrestleMania, even though he's not even wrestling CM Punk's not on the show. He's wrestling Seth Rollins, and still, the entire build to WrestleMania, he's making fun of Punk for having a torn tricep. Everywhere he goes, it's part of the conversation, even after WrestleMania. And he's tweeting memes, and he's making t-shirts, and he's doing all of it. For CM Punk, logically, for that character to allow the character Drew McIntyre to have a moment would be so against what we know CM Punk to be. You'd almost have to question whether this was actually CM Punk anymore or not. When CM Punk first came back to WWE, cut a promo on Monday Night Raw, and people thought it was too friendly. It was too corporate. To use an MJF term, it was PG Punk. It was corporate Punk. And they didn't like that. So what did Punk do? A few days later, came back and ran down the entire roster. And what he thought about everybody, including Roman Reigns, including Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, everybody. Cody Rhodes. So the fact that this moment was so built for Drew to finally get it, the moment that he didn't get at WrestleMania 36 because of the pandemic, the moment that he didn't get at Clash at the Castle 2022 because we were in the Bloodline era, the moment that he didn't get at WrestleMania 40 because Punk screwed him over and Damian Priest cashed in, that Drew was finally, he never had it. Like his entire second run in the WWE, you could argue, had built to this moment in Scotland where he was finally going to get it. Logically, there's no way that character CM Punk can allow that man to have that moment. It's not about, this idea, and you'll hear it from a lot of people who want you to believe that they understand wrestling more than you or I do. And they'll go, well, this feud doesn't need the title, and that feud needs the title, and this title, and that feud. It's not about that. How do you feel? How do you feel when you watch? Title, no title, that's not what it's about. The fact is that if CM Punk had just allowed, and he said it at the press conference, somebody at the press conference asked him, why wouldn't you just let Drew win? That way, if you're going to fight Drew, it'll be for the title. And Punk didn't have to think about it. He didn't have to sit there. Phil Brooks did not have to sit there when asked that question and question the motives of his character. Why would my character do that? He knew exactly. No, because I don't want Drew McIntyre to ever have anything. I don't want anything good to happen to him, ever. And he said as long as he has air in his lungs, he will make sure that Drew McIntyre does not hold a title. That's a big statement to make. Because that's not for this rivalry. That's for ever. He's now created a forever rivalry with Drew McIntyre. I think that the point here is that people thought, there were some people that thought screwing Drew McIntyre in Scotland was just like taking it too far because the moment's right there. And that's why Punk had to do it. There are people questioning the booking. There are people questioning a lot of stuff. And I get it, man. People were pissed leaving Glasgow, chanting BS, chanting all this stuff. But that's part of it. That's what it is. And this is the ultimate beat in the story. The fact that Drew McIntyre was about to beat up Corey Graves. If you watch the video of him leaving the ring after the show went off the air, he wants to beat up Corey Graves. He wants to beat up the referee. The only reason he doesn't go after Wade Barrett is because Wade Barrett is as mad as Drew is, or almost as mad as Drew is. And so now you've got this scenario where it's not Punk and Drew having fun with each other. It's not Punk and Drew playing tricks on each other. It's not who got who better. It's not he who laughs last, laughs loudest. It's now, hey man, I was happy that injury ruined your whole life plan. It made me happy. And then CM Punk goes, cool. Now that you've said that publicly, I'm going to make sure I ruin your life plan. I'm going to ruin your life. That's what I'm going to do. Punk said at that press conference that he was cleared to do what he did at Clash. meaning referee or whatever. But he said he wasn't going to be on Raw and that he was going home to get cleared, hopefully, and that this Friday on SmackDown, he'd hopefully be able to make an announcement. I've got to believe that this is not a Money in the Bank match. I've got to believe that this is a SummerSlam match. I don't know what they're going to do to keep those guys away from each other for, 6 weeks or so? Beginning of August? But whatever they've got to do, they've got to do. Because I firmly believe, and look, I get it. I get it. I'm willing to entertain any conversation about the idea that they lost a moment there. But I think there was an idea that when Sami Zayn lost in Montreal, and I would argue that that was a bigger one because Sami Zayn was a pure babyface and Roman was a villain who had held that title hostage for years at that point. And Sami Zayn had not only never had that moment, he'd never been the guy. And many people thought he never would be the guy. And I think the idea was that if that moment didn't happen, Roman doubles down on this reputation of being a total moment spoiler. Nobody gets by Roman, no matter how perfect it is. And that hopefully Sami Zayn comes out even better for it, with more sympathy, with more people rooting for him, and that the story of Sami just gets that much deeper. And I would argue that it did. I would argue that he did certainly come out of that match stronger than he did coming in. And I don't think, I think for what it was effective long term. And I think that that's the play here. That by the time you get to Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk, hopefully in Cleveland at SummerSlam, you're going to have the biggest grudge match in years. That you're going to have a match that people are going, this has to main event. How could anything main event instead of this match? And part of the reason for that is what happened in Glasgow. This becomes a giant part of the story that gets here. And I think that you have to look at a lot of decisions that way. I think you have to look at a lot of decisions that are being made as not necessarily, have we blown this moment, but did we blow this moment to get us to another moment? And I think that as good as the Bloodline story has been, and as much as that long-term storytelling has worked, I think that clearly this is something Triple H loves, is the long-term story. And I think that this is something we're going to see more and more and more of. Delayed gratification, but when that payoff comes, it is so, so sweet. And I wonder, I talked about this a little bit with Megan on the Instant Reaction show, but, that Cody thing, building up to this Cody match, AJ and Cody had that great confrontation on SmackDown, and AJ called Cody Rhodes a quitter. He name-dropped many promotions, including promotions WWE doesn't work with. As of now, anyway, who knows what the future holds. Said he quit New Japan after he quit the WWE the first time. Quit Ring of Honor. And then he said he goes and starts a promotion and he quits that too. And everybody goes, oh, see, this is taking a true story. It's kind of like what Drew does. People go, well, Drew's not a villain. He's telling the truth. Villains tell the truth. It's perspective. Perspective is what makes heroes and villains, not truths or falsities. If somebody's not telling the truth, yeah, they're a villain, but more importantly, they're a liar. If somebody is telling the truth, but that truth has driven them to do bad things, that still makes them a villain. Cody is having his story retold to him, but from a perspective where you're like, oh, AJ's not wrong. And maybe there is something to that. Maybe there are layers to this whole story. I don't know. But that combined with the moment, AJ Styles is handcuffed to the rope. Cody is holding those steps above his head. And man, you couldn't help, or I couldn't help, but go, this is the moment that Cody becomes a different person. This is a different side of Cody, and not in the sort of, trivial, cliche, whoa, this has really brought out a different side of Cody. No, this is actually like, these are new personality traits that we haven't really seen in Cody Rhodes before. This is Cody going dark. And I don't know if this is me reading into it too much. I don't know if this is just something that I want to see. So I'm seeing it. But the idea of Cody slowly drifting into darkness, the idea that throughout Cody's career, the reason that Cody left the WWE was because he wasn't a main event guy. He wasn't being put in positions to succeed on the levels that he thought he was capable of. And then he goes all over. He goes to the Indies. He goes to Impact. He goes to Ring of Honor. He goes to New Japan. He starts AEW. He does all this stuff. He becomes a Ring of Honor champion. Becomes TNA's champion. Never becomes AEW's champion, but he started the whole damn promotion. Okay? He beat Anthony Ogogo. He won the TNT championship. What more can you ask of the guy? But he finally does it. He's in WWE for a year. Loses his first match with Roman Reigns. Loses the title. Again, a moment that was made for him. And we don't get it. And he doesn't get it. And then he's got to go and fight even harder. He's got to beat Brock Lesnar. He's got to win the Royal Rumble again. He's got to deal with the fact that The Rock wants to make WrestleMania his and not give it to Cody Rhodes. And maybe, as I said on over the weekend, maybe that becomes the sort of catalyst of how everything changes for Cody Rhodes. The fact that even after he's earned it, there are forces trying to take it from him. And then he finally gets it. And the age-old question is, what happens to the boy who gets everything he ever wanted? I said it after night 2 of WrestleMania. According to Willy Wonka, what happened to the boy who got everything he ever wanted? He lived happily ever after. But what if that story is not true? Willy Wonka had a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Willy Wonka double-talked more than any character I know in any, I was going to say literature, but let's be honest, I watched the movie. Gene Wilder was phenomenal. But what happens if the pressure of finally being champion just starts weighing on Cody? The idea that people that he thought were his friends, AJ Styles, are willing to not be his friends and lie to his face and betray him to get what he has. The idea that fans that he thought were his fans are willing to turn their backs on him and go, well, I thought it would be better once Cody was champion, but I don't know. Cody is champion. It's just not doing it for me. What? You guys were rolling with me for 2 years? And now it's not. All right, I'm trying. I had a great match with AJ. Had a great match with Logan Paul. Had this I Quit match. I know, but I don't know. He's got Nick Aldis over here, who's kind of being weird, almost like the general manager of the brand that he's on. Wants to get what's on his shoulder. Imagine everywhere that you go, everybody, friend, foe, family, wants to take what you have. That's got to be a lot of pressure. And all he's trying to do is shake hands, kiss babies, and be polite and be nice. Wear his heart on his sleeve and fight for the good people. But what happens when he gets worn down so much that other part of him that wants the title because he wants it, that other part of him that wants the title because of his hubris, because there has to be ego there. Cody is the champion, which means everybody wants it. But guess what? When you're the champion, that also means that you have something that you are not willing to give up. And that can be an honorable thing, or that can be very uncharitable. That can be very selfish. That can be ugly. And if the pressure leans on you the wrong way, That could bring out the worst in you. I mean, you see Randy Orton eyeing that WWE championship? Randy Orton, somebody who's known all of his life, somebody that's coming out to defend Cody Rhodes in this attack from the Bloodline, is also eyeing that championship. Cody Rhodes has friends nowhere. He almost beheaded AJ Styles. AJ had to say, I quit. I didn't realize you were capable of this. What happens if that smile slowly fades away? And all of a sudden, Cody is doing very ugly things to keep what he worked so hard for. What if this journey that he took to get there isn't about the sort of journey that we all went on together anymore? What if because of that journey, he's not willing to let it go? He's not willing to give it up. Not only does he want people to understand that he's the champion, he wants credit for his journey. And he wants people to accept that he's going to do whatever it takes, good or bad, to keep his title. I don't think that this is something that should happen this summer. But he has a match with who knows who. And we'll talk about it. He has a match with Solo Sikoa. He has a match with Randy Orton. He has a match with Kevin Owens. He has a match with Nick Aldis. I mean, run down the list. Tama Tonga. Roman Reigns returns. The Rock eventually returns. And when The Rock returns, The Rock did an interview this week or last week and again brought up the road to WrestleMania 41 and what they're on the precipice of. And maybe the answer is The Rock versus Roman Reigns. But maybe the answer is The Rock versus Cody Rhodes. Either way, when The Rock returns, it'll be a year removed. The Rock hasn't been a part of all this. Cody Rhodes has been a part of the grind, and what has the grind done to Cody Rhodes? Even if we don't see the final straw snap until WrestleMania, I'd love for Cody to go down a very, very dark road and become a heel who doesn't feel like he did anything wrong. I believe that Cody Rhodes in AEW was trying to be a heel, a meta heel. When he said he would never turn heel, he said it to get booed. I think that character tweaked on the level that Cody's at now could be very, very interesting. I saw this moment and I thought Homelander Cody may be closer than any of us realize. We also found out that Chad Gable, unsurprisingly to me, has re-signed with the WWE, and that, to me, and this is why maybe, when we talk about what might happen, what we expect to see, what we want to see, it's not always quite so linear. It's like we walked into that Otis-Sami Zayn match going, do you think Otis is going to turn or not turn? And it's like, maybe he won't fully turn, but maybe he'll go further than he's ever gone before, right? And that's how we get to this place where we'll eventually go, because I'm looking at this SummerSlam card, this potential SummerSlam card, because here's what I've got in front of me. What do we know? Okay, let me write one more down that we pretty much know at this point. We know that the King and the Queen of the Ring get the opportunity to compete for their respective WWE championships. So we'll have Damian Priest, I would imagine, unless he loses somehow to somebody between now or at Money in the Bank, because we still have another pay-per-view before SummerSlam. But I don't see either champion losing their title before SummerSlam. In my mind, Damian Priest versus Gunther is happening, and Nia Jax versus Bayley is happening. And honestly, I don't know that today I could argue that either champion should retain. I feel like Nia beating Bayley and becoming this irresistible force, and Bayley eventually being on the chase once again for that title, is to me the most interesting outcome of that potential match. And Damian Priest, by the time we get to August, being a straight up babyface, because that's another, there's been a criticism going around that between Damian Priest, Drew McIntyre, and Gunther, they're all heels. How can we get invested? Number one, there's different levels to this. There's three very different characters, that's for sure. You've got Gunther, who is, I would say, a traditional heel, but is so good at what he does that people low-key love him. You have Drew McIntyre, who is just telling his truths, and for that, some people don't buy that he's a heel. And then you have Damian Priest, who to me is clearly on this slow road to babyfaceville. And I think that by the time we get to SummerSlam, you'll have good guy Damian Priest versus Gunther. You'll have a Damian Priest who built a foundation leading into Clash at the Castle as somebody whose motivation is to prove that he's not a transitional champion. And now he gets put to the hardest test by facing the King of the Ring, Gunther. And I personally think that SummerSlam is that moment for Gunther to be crowned. I think CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre is a very, very likely scenario and potentially main event of that show. And that's a match that could not only go either way, but could go any combination of ways. I think Otis versus Gable is very, very possible for that show. Some of this stuff might happen at Money in the Bank, but I feel like this is where we're going to put the cards out. I think the fact that we didn't, if we got a full turn at Clash at the Castle, then maybe you do pay it off at Money in the Bank. But people are very invested in this Alpha Academy story. And we didn't get a full turn yet. Which makes me believe we can milk it for a couple of weeks, have the turn eventually happen, maybe at Money in the Bank, and then boom, here comes SummerSlam, Otis versus Gable. And you want to talk about moments. That's when Otis gets back his Mandy Rose WrestleMania 36 moment that, whether you want to remember it or not, would have been, save for Drew McIntyre winning the title, the biggest moment of WrestleMania 36, and a massive stadium ovation for Otis. People forget that Otis was on his way to a massive stadium ovation at WrestleMania 36, and he has not gotten close to that. However, I believe that if we finally get the Otis-Chad Gable match at SummerSlam, we will be in a stadium in Cleveland, and that will be the night that Otis gets a stadium going nuts for him when he finally puts down Master Gable. If Rhea Ripley is back, we could get Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley. I don't know how long she's out for. We wildly speculate. It is rule number 2 here on Notsam Wrestling. The fact that it is still being played up would lead me to believe that it can't be that long before Rhea Ripley is back. The fact that this Dominic stuff is happening and Dominic is being straddled leads me to believe it can't be that long before Rhea Ripley is cleared. And I think SummerSlam is the place to do it. LA Knight versus Logan Paul. Clearly we're going to get it at some point. LA Knight was in Logan Paul's house. Could happen at Money in the Bank. Las Vegas would be a great town for it, and it would be a great little something to throw on that show that goes like, hey, we have huge matches on Money in the Bank too. But also, wouldn't be surprised to see it at SummerSlam. And then you talk about some other main event caliber matches. It feels to me like SummerSlam could be a perfect opportunity for Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes. I think that you can get there a couple of ways. Everything counts. And we plant the seeds for the next story while we're telling this story. That's the area that we're in right now in WWE. And I don't know if you've heard, It's a new era. I think that what I'd love to see, because Solo Sikoa and the Bloodline have already declared that Cody is in check. Randy Orton came out and helped Cody, but he was also staring at that title. I think that Solo Sikoa, who beat Kevin Owens on SmackDown, I think that maybe we'll get the six-man tag soon. Like on SmackDown, you'll see Cody, Randy, and KO, where maybe we can flirt with the idea of Randy being invested in that title again, versus Solo, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa. At some point, you got to, right? But for me, I'm going, because you could wait, right? You don't have to do Solo versus Cody at Money in the Bank. You could hold that off for SummerSlam. But what if you have this scenario where it's Solo versus Cody and Cody Rhodes beats Solo Sikoa? Well, if Cody Rhodes beats Solo Sikoa at Money in the Bank, then that opens the field to get you to Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam for sure. But what else does it do? Cody Rhodes beats Solo Sikoa. What did Solo Sikoa tell us the night after WrestleMania? Losing has consequences, right? Solo loses to Cody. That is when the music hits. That is when we see Roman Reigns once again. And Roman Reigns comes to the ring by himself. In Las Vegas, no Usos. Paul Heyman is already at ringside with Solo Sikoa. He looks thrilled. Roman Reigns confronts Solo Sikoa. No microphone, but the camera's close enough that we can pick up. He said, the tribal chief is back. Losing has consequences, right? And Solo Sikoa just looks at Roman Reigns and goes, right. And that's when the Tongans attack Roman Reigns. And Roman, who came to the ring, and maybe the Tongans are behind Roman Reigns as he's confronting Solo. And we think Roman is back with his hands on the bloodline. But when he says losing has consequences, right? And Solo looks at him almost with a smirk and goes, right. The Tongans attack Roman Reigns. Solo Sikoa starts beating down Roman Reigns. The bloodline leaves Roman Reigns lying, and Paul Heyman is in this state of utter catastrophe. Paul Heyman cannot believe what's going on. He has no idea which side to take. And that is left to question as we go off the air for Money in the Bank. And it brings us to Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa at SummerSlam. And we still don't have the Usos. Jimmy Uso doesn't come back. Jey Uso is on Raw doing his own thing. And we get to Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa. And by this time, Paul Heyman has made it clear he's on the side of the tribal chief. And Roman makes it clear that his goal is to rebuild the bloodline. And it's Solo and the Tongans versus Roman Reigns. And SummerSlam is when Paul Heyman finally betrays Roman Reigns. Maybe you get a new member of the bloodline, one that we've been waiting for a long time, that comes out and attacks Roman Reigns. But ultimately, Paul Heyman betrays Roman Reigns, allowing Solo Sikoa to beat Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, which then in turn leads to Roman rebuilding the bloodline. And it gets to War Games and Survivor Series, where it's Solo Sikoa and his team of Tongans with Paul Heyman in their corner versus Roman Reigns, Jimmy Uso, Jey Uso, and Sami Zayn. So with all that said, if everything goes according to the way I just laid out, SummerSlam could be Damian Priest versus Gunther, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, Bayley versus Nia Jax, Otis versus Gable, Liv versus Rhea Ripley, LA Knight versus Logan Paul, Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa. Talk about too much birthday. That would be the most loaded SummerSlam of all time. If we end up getting half of that for SummerSlam this year, I will be absolutely thrilled. But what that card tells me that I was just able to make up is that we've been telling stories here. That the fact that there is that much, that without stretching, without going out on a limb, I could present all these ideas as potential SummerSlam matches, even with a Money in the Bank pay-per-view happening between now and then. And I guarantee you, within weeks, I'll have another SummerSlam card all the way laid out. But what that tells me is not, this is what SummerSlam is going to look like. What that tells me is, this is how loaded WWE is right now, both in terms of talent and in terms of stories. And when we talk about WWE talent, we can talk about the fact that they're all over the place. So the announcement was made over the weekend after Clash at the Castle. There was reported on the internet that Pro Wrestling Noah was going to make a big announcement as it pertained to the WWE. Now, Noah is the wrestling promotion that I think last year, I want to say, if not maybe the beginning of this year in January. Maybe it was last year in January. I don't know. I don't know. WWE sent Shinsuke Nakamura to Noah to wrestle Muta on the Great Muta's retirement tour. You know, he went through that tour of having dream matches for, you know, whatever, knowing these would be his last matches. And they did send Nakamura over to Noah to do that. So there were some people wondering if that was going to happen again, if WWE was going to send Shinsuke Nakamura over to Noah. But if you're watching this show, you know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever, East Coast time, Noah does a show over the weekend. And at one point during the show, we see this pre-recorded thing, a WWE logo comes up. You know, they're speaking in Japanese about the partnership, I suppose. And then we see the face of AJ Styles. And AJ Styles announces that on July 13th, which is less than a month away, he will be in Japan. He is going to Pro Wrestling Noah to face Marufuji. Marufuji is a legend in Noah, a legend in Japanese wrestling. And, you know, I'm not nearly as well versed in Japanese wrestling as I am in the art of American wrestling, WWE and the like. But even I know Marufuji versus AJ Styles is a huge deal, not just because you've got AJ Styles coming from the WWE. And by the way, on that same date, I believe it's also on July 13th, Marigold, which is a Japanese female promotion, will have Io Sky wrestling on their show. So over in Japan, the WWE is partnering up with both Marigold and Noah this summer, July 13th. On Friday, same night as SmackDown, TNA was doing Against All Odds, their pay-per-view. I tuned in for it on the TNA app. It was a lot of fun. But one of the matches was a special mystery opponent for Jordan Grace. And there was a lot of... I was surprised at how much, quote-unquote, mystery there was about it. Because NXT did a pretty good job of making it clear that Tatum Paxley was who they were going to send. Because you had to know it was going to be an NXT talent. The fact that Jordan Grace fought on NXT Battleground for the NXT Women's Championship would lead you to believe that NXT is going to return the favor. And on NXT television, Tatum Paxley interacted with Jordan Grace and showcased, told her how much she loved her championship and how much she wanted it. And then at the pay-per-view, at the premium live event, at Battleground, Tatum Paxley got involved in the match, as did Ash by Elegance, the former Dana Brooke. So, not surprised, but very, very cool to see Tatum Paxley, a current WWE television talent, an NXT superstar who's on NXT television, wrestling on a TNA pay-per-view. is not something that was on my bingo card for this year. But here we are. She lost. Ash, the former Dana Brooke, got involved again. So they're on TNA, clearly building to Jordan Grace and Ash by Elegance. But what was really, really cool was that at the end of the show, Jeff Hardy, whose AEW deal, I guess, just came up, showed up to make the save with the baby faces. You had the big heel faction with Moose and Hawkins and Eddie Edwards and all them beating down after Matt Hardy was not able to beat Moose. Matt Hardy unsuccessfully attempting to become the TNA champion. And then here comes all the baby faces. You know, here comes Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. Everybody comes out. Numbers are too much. Can't get the job done. And then that music plays. And thank God whoever found out that music was like license-free, royalty-free music, because they're just playing it everywhere. I don't remember it ever being played in TNA. Maybe they just didn't realize they could, because it definitely played in AEW. And it definitely played on TNA. Both Hardy Boys are in TNA, but would you look at that? Jeff Hardy and Tatum Paxley, a current WWE television talent, on the same pay-per-view, and it was a TNA pay-per-view. Wild times, and I'm interested to see what the Hardy Boys at this phase in their careers do. You know, do we see, since there's this partnership, the Hardy Boys jump in and do something on NXT? It could be really cool. Would WWE save that and go, nah, we should probably have that on the main roster. The Hardy Boys are a big deal. Especially if it's just like a one-off specialty thing. Do they go on another indie run? You know, like they did before their previous comeback with WWE, before WrestleMania, what was that, 32 in Orlando? I mean, they built up so strong that the WWE said, yeah, it's time to bring the Hardy Boys back. That was when the broken universe first kind of started and changed both of their careers. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And it'll be interesting to see if this week on NXT, there's a battle royal that Cody Rhodes announced. And he said there would be a representation, like a 25-man battle royal. Winner is the number one contender for the NXT championship. And there would be representation from not just NXT's locker room. So I would imagine we'll get visitors from Raw. I will imagine we'll get visitors from SmackDown. But who knows? Maybe we'll get visitors from TNA as well. Personally, for that title match, I do hope it's an NXT star that wins. You know, I mean, it'd be amazing if it wasn't, right? It's still going to be cool. If it's Trick Williams versus whoever, Moose, that would be nuts. If it's Trick Williams versus somebody from the main roster, if, you know, I don't even know who comes down to NXT. I just hope that they stick to telling their stories as opposed to just making cool things happen because it's possible. You know what I mean? It's a fine balance. It's a tightrope to walk, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be able to do just fine. But while we're talking about talent popping up everywhere, of course, it's Forbidden Door season. So let's not pretend like over on AEW TV, you haven't seen regular representation from both New Japan and CMLL. So now you've got AEW, New Japan, and CMLL working together. You got WWE/NXT and TNA and Noah and Marigold working together. I think Stardom is working with AEW. And Takeshita is going to be in the G1. Takeshita, who I believe is also like a DDT talent, that's another promotion in Japan, is going to be in New Japan's G1 tournament. So look, man, I mean, you pick your favorites, and everybody should pick their favorites. That's part of the joy of being a fan. But honestly, like, those walls, they are coming down. And we talked earlier about the lines being blurred between storyline and reality. The lines are being blurred from promotion to promotion. And I think that is not only a great thing for wrestling, not only a great thing for wrestlers, but who is this podcast for? There's probably some wrestlers listening, but ultimately, this is a podcast for wrestling fans. And that's who it's awesome for. The fact that this stuff that we could play out with our action figures when we were kids is now happening in real life is such a good time. And I think we're only scratching the surface. It's going to be really, really interesting to see where all of this goes. It'll also be interesting to see where amongst all those promotions that we just mentioned, Ricochet goes to. Of course, Ricochet was written off television, or so it would seem, on Monday Night Raw. You had this awesome Braun Breaker versus Ilya Dragunov match, and that's I felt like was one of those tests for Braun Breaker. Like, we know how fast he can go. We know he can do a good spear, but man, it's hard to see exactly what the method to the madness is in NXT when it comes to developmental. Because people were ready for Braun Breaker. People thought Braun Breaker was going to come up to the main roster literally 2 years ago. Like WrestleMania 38 weekend, which was the takeover or the NXT Premium Live event where they did Braun Breaker versus Dolph Ziggler. People were like, when Braun Breaker didn't win the NXT championship, people assumed, well, he must be coming up. It's time. He's ready now. And then a year goes by, and people are like, okay, he's ready now. And then another year goes by. And in that third year, you saw Braun Breaker doing stuff he hadn't done before. Braun Breaker went on that first run of being that ultra babyface that powered through everybody. And that's great. And it reminded you of Goldberg, except, kind of already a more, varied move set. It was cool. It was like a modern day version of that. But what you end up with is that third year where people are like, I can't believe he's not on the main roster. And in that time, he's developing this whole other skill set. It's not like they're keeping him down there to just do everything that he was doing before. He's spending all this time with Baron Corbin. He's tagging. So he's learning a different style of things. He's being a heel. So he's learning how to develop a character and personality and everything. So now he's done so much over the course of 3 years that when he gets to the main roster, you have a superstar who I feel like when I'm watching him, that they don't have this person that they're like, look, we see him as a star. Let's cover everything up and make him look great. Instead, they go, oh, he's better at all this stuff than we thought. Let's rush this thing to the top. Because he has this match with Ilya Dragunov that felt like, it's like, okay, all right, big boy. If you're ready for this, let's see what you got with Ilya. And the match was fantastic. It was great. Back and forth. It was just awesome. You felt like these guys have been on the roster for what? 6 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is, since the draft, they've been on the main roster. And it's like, yeah, this is the future. This is what this can look like. This is fantastic. This rules. So you got this great match. Braun Breaker ends up winning, which is a big look for Braun Breaker. And then Ricochet attacks Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker, of course, takes great umbrage with this and ends up finding Ricochet in the back, not only attacking him, lawn darting him into the side of the production truck like he was Kevin Nash to Rey Mysterio Jr. And then, to make it even worse, busts him through a car windshield. Ricochet ends up going away on the ambulance, and a lot of people thinking that's it for Ricochet. And of course, that hasn't been confirmed at all. Who knows where it's going to go. This is easily the type of thing where Ricochet could decide, look, I've seen what's out there, and you know what? I've built up, in the rumors of me leaving, I've built up a lot of love for Ricochet. I've built up a lot of appreciation for Ricochet. Maybe the best move is to come back to WWE. Maybe the best move is to stick around. Or maybe the best move is to take that love and bring it over to AEW. Or maybe the best move is to take all that love and all those eyeballs and hit up New Japan, hit up TNA, hit up the Indies, and remind people what I'm capable of. The story of Ricochet used to be that match that he had in the mid-2010s with Will Ospreay. Maybe he wants to run that back one time. Maybe he wants to do a year in AEW and think that he can increase his value, go back to WWE or go to New Japan after that. Oh, who knows? Maybe stay there forever. Who knows? I know that I felt like the way that was handled was good because it made sense, right? In the sense that if he isn't coming back, and they put out an announcement that said he was going to be out for an undisclosed amount of time, which covers bases and is perfect. I know that people did get terrified. There were people terrified that they were like, okay, they were worried. And this is where I have to apologize because I feel like the everything counts motto, rule number 3 of Notsam Wrestling, has led people into sometimes reading too much into things. And they look at the ambulance as being symbolic of Ricochet leaving the WWE. And what did Samantha Irvin do? She ran to the back and she said, no, I want to go with him. I have to go with him. And she got in the ambulance and the door shut and it drives away. And there were people going, oh my God, Sam, is that Samantha saying that she's leaving? Samantha's not leaving, is she? I don't think Samantha's leaving. I don't think that was what she was saying. I don't think that, and they go, but everything counts. I go, you're right. I can't fault you for using my own logic against me, but that's not. I don't think that's what that was. And then she was back in Scotland. So I don't think Samantha Irvin is leaving, and I hope to God she's not. Because she is, Howard Finkel, the late great GOAT, Howard Finkel, is the guy that's on our intro. But aside from Howard Finkel, Samantha Irvin's the best ring announcer. She's the GOAT as far as ring announcers go, and she's one of us. She's a fan. That's what makes her so great. So, yeah, I don't think she's going anywhere. I hope she's not going anywhere. Obviously, I don't know. But, yeah, it'll be. I think that this was a real good way to write Ricochet off because anything could happen after this. Anything from him going as far away as possible to him coming right back. So that we'll have to keep an eye on and see where it all lands as we're keeping an eye on this Dominic Mysterio, Liv Morgan thing. Bro, did you see Finn Balor slip that hotel key? Did you see when they put that hotel key on the table and said, no more of this? Everybody's dapping up and Finn Balor just slides the key. I love people trying to make a conversation of this. Do you think Finn Balor was taking that key just to keep it away from Dom? No. I certainly do not think that Finn Balor was just taking that key to keep it away from Dom. No, as a matter of fact, I do not think that at all. I think that Finn Balor had lust in his eyes, brother. I think Finn Balor had ulterior motives. A man does not formulate abdominal muscles like Finn Balor has to just be his brother's keeper. I don't think that's what Finn Balor was doing at all. And I'm interested. I want to get to the bottom of what the hell is going on with these guys. And then Liv Morgan puts out this post on Father's Day, wishing a happy Father's Day to Dominic Mysterio and calling him daddy. Oh my God, it's too much for me. It's too much for me. I would not be surprised if we meet again. I would imagine the odds are high that there'll either be a Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning emergency podcast. The QR code went out again during the Gable entrance at Clash at the Castle. And the Uncle Howdy appears imminent. I don't like that people are saying the Wyatt Six. The Wyatt Six was never a WWE thing. The Wyatt Six is a pure internet creation. So until Wyatt Six is set on the air, let's not say Wyatt Six. That's not a thing. Uncle Howdy, on the other hand, it does look like Monday Raw. We're getting it. If you want my initial reaction to it, watch Raw Talk. I host Raw Talk with Megan, who did the reaction show with me every Monday on Peacock. So that'll be the first opportunity I have to talk about it. But, who knows? Maybe there won't be enough there to do a full emergency podcast on. But if there is, there's no way that I'm going to be able to stay away from this microphone. I imagine that you'll have thoughts as well. You can feel free to email them in to notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com is our email address. Don't forget to go to notsam.com. There's a ticket link right there. Forget about how epic SummerSlam is going to be. The Thursday before SummerSlam is going to be even more epic. 8 p.m. at Hilarities in Cleveland. I will be bringing Not Sam Wrestling live to that club. Get your tickets now. We will have guests. It will be an amazing time. Those live shows are always so much fun. So be there or be squared. Notsam.com for tickets. Let's get to these emails. We'll go to Sarah, who writes in, Sam, hope you and the family are doing well. I got back into wrestling after the Bad Bunny match with Damian Priest. So you've seen that whole rise of Damian Priest. and have been listening to you ever since. You did a great thing, Sarah. That is so smart. Can I tell you that? I can only imagine how much better, because like I don't get to listen to my own podcast as a fan. That would make me crazy. But man, I can't imagine how great it must be to be able to watch WWE every week and then have it complemented by this podcast. You guys are lucky. That's awesome. My question is, since we know Uncle Howdy is debuting on Raw, how do you think they do it? Do they close the show and we just see the closing? Do they attack Jey Uso in his qualifying match? What are your thoughts? I don't know, man. And I don't want to go too deep into it because by the time a lot of people are watching or listening to this, it's probably already happened. I think that the clock ran out at 8 p.m. So I don't know if they start Raw with Uncle Howdy. I think they'll attack somebody. I think it'll most likely be middle of the show. End of the 8 o'clock hour, end of the 9 o'clock hour, something like that. I find it difficult to believe it'll be the main event story, but who knows? Who knows? Depending on how big they've got it planned, that will be your answer. You know? Although, if my plan for SummerSlam is to have the Usos away from Roman Reigns, then the idea of Jey and Uncle Howdy setting up something would work in that favor. Jey would be occupied over here with this Uncle Howdy gang, so he wouldn't have any time for Roman until after SummerSlam. So maybe. I'm excited for it, though, Sarah, and I appreciate the email. David writes in, what's the haps? Happy Father's Day to my podcast, Tribal Chief. I appreciate that very much, Davey. Is the referee's finger point to the back truly the most devastating finisher of all time? Absolutely. I heard you mention it on a previous episode, and I mentioned it again on the recap of the instant reaction to Clash at the Castle. Since then I've noticed that it takes out everyone from Chelsea Green at Clash to Diesel at WrestleMania 10. It's true. He got right out of the ladder. Big Daddy Cool, 7 foot, fringes on his vest. He got new gear for WrestleMania 10. Silver tank top. I'd never seen it before. Never saw it after. He didn't even get to be out there for the full match. Why? Because the referee pointed and said, get to the back. There has never been a superstar who is more powerful than the referee doing that. And if referees realized how much power they have in that one move, they would realize that that power should be transferred to everything that they do. If these finger points were never a part of history, how would the match outcomes differ today? Everything counts. I mean, it'd be the Wild West. Everybody'd be searching for Curly's gold. If people didn't listen to that point to the back, we'd be riddled with interference. I don't even know if I could watch the product. I'm kidding. It's rule number 1. I always watch the product. The captain's writing in, after watching your review pod with Megan, I started thinking about the ending of the I Quit match with Cody hitting AJ with the stairs after AJ quit. It reminded me of the ending of John Cena and Batista at Over the Limit 2010. Look at you. Where Cena AA'd Batista off the Camaro through the stage. Yeah, it was good. Maybe this time they do lean into the top babyface getting more aggressive and heelish as the run goes on. And we do get Homelander Cody, where we didn't get villainous Cena. I think that's right. Cody getting his hands dirty to protect what he earned, even as he starts to face other faces, adding a layer of paranoia to his courageous babyface persona could make him more interesting if his title reign starts to dry up before he re-engages with The Rock. Always fun to speculate. Even you speculating that his title reign could dry up is enough to plant those seeds, is enough for Cody to say this. After everything I had to do, after the ride that we went on together, now you lose faith in me? Everyone's betraying this guy, Cody Rhodes. Dustin writes in. I wonder if it's Dustin Rhodes. No, it's not Dustin Rhodes. Hey, man, I love your show and have been a longtime listener. After last week's episode, a writer wrote in about the Roman return, and you mentioned a few things that needed to happen before Roman Rhodes too. I know you have mentioned some of this before, but it got me thinking, what if Rock returns around SummerSlam leading to Cody Rock? Cody wins but gains Rock's respect, and Rock starts recruiting him as the next corporate champion, kind of filling the Rock's shoes. At first he resists, but eventually turns in and is the Rock's corporate champ. Then Roman returns as a face, joins Jimmy and Jay for Bloodline War. When it's through, he wants Cody, but Rock says you have to beat me to get to Cody. We now have Rock Roman at Rumble, and then Cody Reigns 2 at WrestleMania? Oh, that's not a good idea at all, buddy. So you're telling me you have The Rock, and you're going to just use him at all the pay-per-views except WrestleMania. You could build up to one super Rock versus Cody, and then a year later do Rock versus Roman Reigns. But instead, you're going to have Rock versus Roman as a singles match at the Royal Rumble, and Rock versus Cody at SummerSlam with a 1-month build. And then we get a Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes rematch. And Cody somehow didn't give Rock his match with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40, but now is allowing The Rock to represent him less than a year later. Okay. This is dirty business. CM Punk yelled at somebody at the press conference for fantasy booking because he goes, your first match with Drew should be Hell in a Cell. What the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about? I was with Punk on that one. That was a terrible idea. If that guy had written into this, written an email into the show, it would have been even worse. No, Dustin, this is a bad idea. But I appreciate the email. I appreciate you listening. Steve, Sam, thank you for your takes on everything pro wrestling. I acknowledge you. Thank you. You should acknowledge me, and I appreciate that you did. Everybody should be acknowledging me. I'm the GOAT. I love your Cody turns into Homelander theory, and I hope to see it come to fruition deep in the future. This would be epic. And it feels very TV show storytelling. That's what we should be doing. This is a TV show. I've had a conversation with people you wouldn't believe the people I've had conversations with, high-ranking people, about how the Emmys should be paying a lot more attention to professional wrestling. It's good guy Walter White slowly becoming the sadistic Heisenberg. Yes! It's Rick Grimes becoming Negan. It's the natural change over time. Yes, yes, yes! The Walter White thing is right on. When Walter White finally says, I did it for me. I did it because I liked it. That moment. Cody is, no, I'm doing this for you guys. I'm going to be main eventing WrestleMania because that's what the fans want. I'm going to be the champion because that's what the fans want. I'm going to win this title for my mom. I'm going to win this title for my dad's spirit. No. I didn't do that for them. I didn't do that for you. I did it for me. I did it because I liked it. Oh, give myself goosebumps. Goosebumps. Woo! Also, if this email is read before the Uncle Howdy reveal, what would you think if this played out like the 1999 Ministry of Darkness story? Something where Howdy slowly turns these superstars into his minions and becomes straight up evil. Thank you for being the pod goat. I'd be very worried. I love the Ministry of Darkness personally, but the fact that it becomes the corporate ministry and the greater power was Vince McMahon. It was me, Austin. It was me all along would lead me. Like, I hated that moment so much and thought it was so dumb that if you told me, you like the Ministry of Darkness, right, Sam? I go, yes. They go, well, what if we could eradicate the Ministry of Darkness from history just so you don't have the Vince McMahon as the higher power reveal? I'd say I'm willing to sacrifice. Yes. Yes. I would do away with the entire Ministry of Darkness storyline if it meant that we could also do away with the corporate ministry and Vince McMahon revealing himself as the higher power. Because that stunk. Hindsight's 2020. Hari writes in, don't you think AJ Styles should have taken a lot more beating before saying I quit? Seeing how far he went to get one more title shot, how desperate he was, him knowing this was his one last chance for redemption, all to quit by taking a third of the beating Cody Rhodes suffered and still didn't give up? No, because I think part of the story should be that AJ saw something in Cody's eyes, that AJ realized that this is a different Cody. AJ was not ready for this Cody. AJ realized he's going to kill me. Cody's going to beat me to death. I got to quit right now. Okay, all right. All right, dude. I didn't realize you cared this much. He's going to cave my skull in. So no. When I put that logic to it, I said, no, I'm okay with it. I already read one from the captain. Josh writes in, Mr. Roberts, just finished your Clash of the Castle reaction pod. I'm telling you, you guys got to send these emails on the later side of the week because they get hot and heavy right before taping. I was also hoping AJ was going to use Mama Rhodes to get Cody to quit. I like the idea of Cody starting to turn into Homelander Cody. What better way to turn him that direction other than Uncle Howdy? No. Now, I'm not saying he needs to join that faction if there is one, but maybe they play enough mind games to turn him evil. No. I don't want to turn Cody Rhodes spooky, scary evil. I want to turn Cody Rhodes maniacal evil. I want to turn Cody Rhodes, politicians are evil. Cody Rhodes comes out like he's ready to run for president. Politicians on the surface, even the best, are like a lot of times very shiny, shake hands, kiss babies, very nice. You know, I like that guy. I'm going to vote for him. There's something about that guy I like. I'd like to sit down and have a beer with that guy. But under the surface, they're evil people. So that's the vibe of Cody, not Uncle Howdy turns him into a warlock. Come on, dude. Plus, Uncle Howdy's coming to Raw. Russell writes in, Russell from the UK here. I hope all is well with you and the family. They're doing fantastic. Beautiful people. Thank you very much. It's been a while now. So now that the dust has settled, can you share anything about your full-time signing? How about how your full-time signing to WWE came about? I went full Baron Corbin. I got a phone call. No, I mean, it was amazing. 2 days, 3 days, 3 or 4 days before my wife was scheduled to deliver our third baby. I got a call from WWE, and they were like, "Hey, man, we like what you've been. Obviously, we like what you've been doing. We've been looking for the right spot for a long time, and." Now's the time. There's some stuff happening over here, and we'd like to bring you on full time. We got this project, we got that project, and the key is that we're working on a lot of other things. And there's a new direction that things are going, and there are people here who think that you would be the right fit for it. And so they, offered me the deal. I pretended to negotiate instead of just going like, yeah, what do you need, my firstborn? I got another one coming. It'll be fine. And and signed the deal. And we signed it very happily. It was a pretty amazing time. Still is an amazing time. Let's go to Andrew, who writes in, at the end of Cody's match, he seemed torn on whether or not to hit AJ with the steel steps. I'm going to go to another one because we just kind of addressed that. Oliver writes in, it was a blast watching Clash, especially with the main event. Everyone knew Punk would interfere, but I thought the way he interfered was surprising. It was a great reveal. I thought when the ref went down, Punk would come in and attack Drew, but the fake ref outfit was great. My thought leaving the match was that the feud between Punk and Drew is incredible, but Priest felt like an afterthought. Priest has been trying to prove he's not a transitional champ, but he hasn't really had any truly dominant PLE wins that make him look all that strong. If we assume he's going to lose the title to Gunther, which is huge, but I don't see Gunther losing at SummerSlam. I don't see a direction with him. If Liv breaks up the Judgment Day and Priest loses his title, what does he do next to keep some of his main event luster? I know we must let them cook, but I was wondering if you had any thoughts on where Priest can go following this reign. It's a good question. Look, I think that just based on how time lines up, that if I'm right, and if they go the way I'd like to see it happen, and Priest is a babyface by SummerSlam, and he loses the title in his ultimate test, then I think the next story we're telling is the rebuilding of Damian Priest. At the same time, he's got Finn Balor, Dominic Mysterio, and JD McDonough to get revenge on. So I think that is the short term, is former members of the Judgment Day, and the long term is the rebuilding of Damian Priest into this true babyface main event champion who can win the title without cashing in the briefcase. Jack writes in, first time, long-ish time, I've been watching and listening since WrestleMania 39. Okay, that's long enough. And first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for helping me, and I can only assume countless others, I can't count them, understand pro wrestling better and in turn enjoy it even more. You hear that, industry? I'm a great influence. I'm very important. My question for you is now you're adding to my SummerSlam. If Seth Rollins is healthy by SummerSlam, would you have him return then, or would you wait until the Raw after that and have him attack someone in particular? Or have him come back at SummerSlam to interrupt whoever wins the World Heavyweight Championship title? Again, I love the show, and since I started listening, I have been able to talk about wrestling with my little brother and actually know what I am saying without sounding like a complete lunatic. Appreciate that. Keep up the great work. I hope to see you in Cleveland on August 1st. You better be there, Jack. I hope to see you too. I like, as much as I feel like the Punk Drew thing is so big that you can get a few matches out of it, I would hold off really with Seth. I would hold off on Seth coming back until it was time to either do Seth and Cody or Seth and Punk. And I'd figure out, am I going to turn him into a heel, or is this going to be a babyface scenario? Because those are really the two, unless Roman comes back for SummerSlam, because those are the three matches, right? Seth and Cody, Seth and Punk, Seth and Roman. So what you have to do is figure out a timeline where one of those three is ready for a huge match. And that's when, out of nowhere, you do the Seth Rollins return, and we realize, oh my God, here we go. Because post-WrestleMania, we got some injuries in the Royal Rumble, and then we got more post-WrestleMania. And you've got a huge section of that roster that will be back at some point. Maybe towards SummerSlam, maybe after SummerSlam. But I'd probably, at this point, wait until after SummerSlam, unless the plan is to do... I mean, you could do Seth and Cody at SummerSlam. That would be pretty big. But I don't know. Seth and Randy. Cody and Randy. I don't know. I probably wait until after SummerSlam, but I'm not cemented there. All right, last question. Christopher writes in. I'm sure everyone has noticed that they've been doing spray bronzer. Sting won the WCW Heavyweight Championship from Hulk Hogan at Starrcade 97. What? I don't know what this guy's talking. I feel like that might have been written under the influence. So Scott writes in, have you ever generated heat as a fan cheering on the heel or unfavored wrestler? My fiance was genuinely worried for my health as one of a tiny minority of Priest fans in Glasgow tonight. Oh, I love that you went to Clash, by the way. That's awesome. Additionally, and speculating wildly, I wonder if this will unleash a monster version of Drew to eventually face Gunther before the year is out. I mean, I think that there is something to that. I do think a Drew Gunther match will happen at some point. I think in answer to your first question, I'm trying to think if there was ever a time. I mean, I've had said things on the pre-show that generated quite a bit of heat. Trying to think if there was a time that I was in the audience. I will tell you this. So going back to whatever it was, Royal Rumble 2015, 2016, whatever the Philadelphia Royal Rumble was, I went to that Royal Rumble with Katie Linendahl, who used to do this show, be a regular on this show with me. And Katie and I drove from here to Philly. And when we got into the arena, she took off her jacket or a hoodie or whatever. She was wearing a Roman Reigns t-shirt. I said, Katie, you got to put that jacket back on. She goes, what do you mean? I go, you have to put that jacket back on. She goes, why? We're Roman Reigns fans, right? We're rooting for Roman Reigns. I go, don't you dare say that in this town. I go, Katie, I think Roman Reigns is going to win the Royal Rumble tonight. And if that happens, they're going to burn this building to the ground. And if you are wearing that t-shirt, they're going to put you at the top of the bonfire. Zip up the hoodie. And I think she did, because I turned out to be right. Luckily, it was only a metaphoric, arson. But still, it wouldn't have been pretty had we been publicly rooting Roman Reigns on that night. As even The Rock, as video would indicate, was confused by the reaction. It was a big one. I appreciate you all. Don't forget about the Cleveland gig. Don't forget, however you're listening to this or watching this, interact with it. If it's on Apple, leave a rating and a review. If it's on Spotify, hit the Q&A, hit a rating, subscribe, listen to all the episodes, download them, go to YouTube. Notsam Wrestling is the channel. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you're watching everything that we put out. We put out a podcast right after Clash of the Castle. If you haven't listened yet, go listen to that now. And who knows? Maybe we'll have to see you again in a couple of soon. If this Uncle Howdy thing goes the way it might go, we'll see. Either way, we'll talk next week, if not before. Have a good one, everybody. See you then.